أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Oh Lord, show us the good as good and bless us to stay with it, and show us falsehood as falsehood, and help us to stay away from it with your mercy, O merciful one. وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Ameen. Okay, so we are continuing on today with the third point of the 19th flash on frugality. We said in the second point, before we continue with the third point, let's the merciful, the compassionate, and not by that frugality. Peace is an understanding of this verse. So today we're gonna do the third point of it. Audio is breaking up. All right. Well, this is really weird. How can that be? But well, okay. Philip keep foul. Just as a key, right? Oh yes, please. That's what we intended on initially. Go ahead, Sohail, please read. Yes.
Okay. So reading from the 19th flash, the third point, and the 19th flash is on frugality. We said in the second point that the sense of taste is a doorkeeper. And indeed, for the heedless and those who have not progressed spiritually or advanced in the way of thanks, it is like a doorkeeper. For the heedless and those who have not progressed spiritually or advanced in the way of thanks, it is like a doorkeeper. Wastefulness should not be indulged in, or the sense of taste's price be raised from 1 to 10 for the sake of giving it pleasure. The sense of taste price be raised from 1 to 10 for the sake of giving it pleasure. However, the sense of taste of those truly on the way of thanks, those seeking reality, and those who approach reality with their hearts is like a supervisor and inspector in the kitchens of divine mercy, as is explained in the comparison in the 6th word. Its duty is to recognize and weigh up the varieties of divine bounties on the tiny scales present in it to the number of foods, and to send the body and stomach news of the food in the form of thanks. Its duty is to recognize and weigh up the varieties of divine bounties on the tiny scales present in it to the number of foods, and to send the body and stomach news of the food in the form of thanks. In this respect, the sense of taste does not only look to the physical stomach, since it looks also to the heart, spirit, and mind. It holds a position and importance superior to the stomach. It holds a position and importance superior to the stomach. It can follow its pleasure on condition it is not wasteful or extravagant, and is purely to carry out its duty of thanks and recognize and perceive the varieties of divine bounty. Is purely to carry out its duty of thanks and recognize and perceive the varieties of divine bounty. And on condition it is licit and does not lead to degradation and begging. In fact, delicious foods may be preferred in order to employ the tongue, which bears the sense of taste and giving thanks. The following is an instance of Sheikh Jilani's wonder working, which alludes to this truth. At one time, being instructed by Gawth al-Azam, Sheikh Jilani, may his mystery be sanctified, was the only son of an aged and anxious man. Sheikh Jilani was the only son of an aged and anxious woman. This esteemed lady had gone to her son's cell and seen that he had nothing to eat but a piece of dry black bread. Her maternal compassion was aroused by his emaciated condition, resulting from his asceticism. She felt sorry for him. Later, she went to Gawth al-Azam in order to complain, and saw the sheikh was tucking into roast chicken. I'm guessing eating. I'm not sure how that's translated, but out of her concern, she declared, "O master, my son is dying of hunger while you are eating chicken." "O master, my son is dying of hunger while you are eating chicken." Whereupon Gawth al-Azam said to the chicken, "Rise up with God's permission." At this, the cooked chicken bones assembled were thrown out of the dish as an entire live chicken. This has been related unanimously through many reliable and documented channels as a marvel of someone whose extraordinary wonder-working is world famous. Gawth al-Azam said to her, "When your son reaches this level, then he too can eat chicken." Thus, the meaning of Gawth al-Azam's words is this: whenever your son's spirit rules his body and his heart rules the desires of his soul, and his reason rules his stomach, and he wants pleasure for the sake of offering thanks, then he may eat delicious things. That is the third point. Just to give my initial thoughts, to me, it's continuation on the verse he quotes at the beginning, chapter 7, verse 31. Eat and drink, but waste not by excess. Qulu washrabu wa la tusrifu. And in the first point, he's addressing what thanks is. In the second point, about the nature of man's body being a vehicle to offer thanks in a way, in a sense, that it's just a doorkeeper, so to speak, the tongue. And then the third point, the question is, what is it a doorkeeper to? And it is a doorkeeper. It's a doorkeeper to man's heart and spirit. Because, as he says in the second paragraph, those who approach reality with their hearts is like a supervisor and inspector in the kitchens of divine mercy. as is explained in the comparison in the sixth word. In other words, the tongue and the stomach are simply means to one experience something, and from that sort of experience conclude that one is being mercifully provided for. That's why it's a doorkeeper, in a sense. As he says, recognize and weigh up the varieties of divine bounties on the tiny scales present in it to the number of foods. So, food is simply, in this example he's giving, it's just a small piece of matter, so to speak, but in it, it sort of reflects all the varieties of divine bounties, or the bounties being provided, which makes them divine. And it's acting like a messenger, with the tongue being the doorkeeper to the stomach, which sends good, like the news to one's humanity so that he can offer thanks. Um, uh, so, so as he says, taste in and of itself, I mean, everything has, in a sense, two faces or two aspects. One that looks to man himself. In other words, taste looks to man. In other words, he derives some sort of pleasure from it. And it looks, therefore, to the stomach. But it also, in a way, looks to the one who's providing him, by addressing his heart, spirit, and mind. And that really is what makes man, or a human being, because he can make sense of it, even with a small piece of, sustenance. And that is why, that's essentially what the duty, so to speak, of the tongue and stomach are. It's in a way to serve the man's heart, spirit, and mind, so as to offer thanks. And by being extravagant or wasteful, do you sort of ignore that relationship, or you become negligent of that relationship? So there is nothing wrong with delicious food per se, as he says. But delicious food, or food in and of itself, should not be the object or the ends. It's not the ends. And one can sort of extrapolate that or make an analogy between any sort of experience. So not just food, but it can be any sort of experience one has in the world. Maybe not food, but maybe something beautiful or something one finds pleasurable. I mean, anything you can think of. And being wasteful or extravagant is, in a sense, wasting that opportunity. Because let's say, it's a nice day and you're out for a walk. Taking it for its own self and saying, I'm enjoying this weather, rather than seeing that sort of creation is made for you to experience, you're essentially being wasteful of the experience itself, just like you'd be wasteful of food. And also you're sort of wasting your sort of humanity in that regard as well. So, and then the last thing he brings in is I guess, a story from Sheikh Jilani, like that gives what he's trying to say by way of an example. And the example is such that um, it's demonstrating his the elevation of, as Nursi mentions, man's heart, man's heart, spirit, and mind over matter. In other words, it's not matter that controls man, but it's his heart, mind, spirit that makes use of matter, or in this case, of food. So that's why he says, whenever your son's spirit rules his body. In other words, the spirit is essentially who man is, and the body is just the vehicle or the clothing to experience the world, for the spirit to experience the world. So in order to know what he is being provided, what are those bounties? His heart rules the desires of his soul, and his reason rules his stomach, and he wants pleasure for the sake of offering thanks. In other words, in the case of eating, he does not eat for the sake of the pleasure of eating. So the stomach rules, or the desires of the soul rule. But he desires to eat, let's say maybe something delicious, to acknowledge, to one experience, and then acknowledge and offer thanks and appreciation for his creator providing um, or bestowing upon him what he has been provided. Um, Only then, as he says, will the boy be able to eat chicken. That's the only way you can eat delicious things. In other words, something is only I think in a way it has a very interesting meaning in that something becomes delicious for you when you see it in this way, because that pleasure is sort of eternal. It's beyond food itself. Food you eat and it's gone in a moment, like as you mentioned in the previous point. But when you sort of connect it back to who's providing it, then it becomes delicious, um, even if it's a small amount. Um, so that's what I took away from the third point. And I don't know if anybody has any comments, thoughts, questions. Ali, remember, go ahead.
I just wanted to start the interactive conversations. What attracted also, in addition to what you said, it is a beautiful summary and really covers the text we studied today. I appreciate it and I thank you very much for it. You mentioned this, but I wanted to just emphasize it and so that it will settle down in our understanding. Physical needs, there are, as far as the text tells us, there are 4 channels of interacting with the world. One, and the first one, and it has to be the first one, physical needs. And physical needs opens up the subject to the mind to question how these kind of things are happening. And the heart, which is called heart, which is emotions, feelings of human beings, appreciated. For example, when we eat something delicious, our stomach doesn't know what it is, but our tongue knows. And our mind says, it is beautiful and I enjoy it. And what is a bit difficult to grasp is, what is the function of spirit here? What does it do? How am I going to benefit from this aspect of my life? It means my spirit. Now, the feelings doesn't really represent the spirit. Spirit is, as we understand, that all our whole human side, what makes me a human being, apart from my body, my animate body, my physical body, just my human side is in fact what makes me a human being. We have to understand that we don't have only 5 senses. 5 external senses communicates with the physical world and tries to understand some qualities in it. But spirit questions, because spirit has consciousness. Only through consciousness that my feelings appreciate what it is. But otherwise, if I'm not conscious, I wouldn't even know whether the delicious food has some taste. Consciousness makes it aware, makes me aware of what am I doing and which kind of qualities I have. This consciousness takes the delicious or the taste of the delicious food, and spirit mind questions it. What is it? Why is it there? Etc. But the heart feelings appreciate it. Oh, it is really nice. I enjoyed it. It lets the conscious or conscious realizes it. But this consciousness at the same time questions both sides at the same time, both sides. What are the both sides? The delicious food out there and my awareness of appreciation of this delicious food. My appreciation of the delicious food. Why, and then questions, why am I put in this interactive position? I need this and it is met. What does it mean? How does the taste exist? How myself, how I am able to appreciate this taste and question, what does it mean for me? I have to question it. What does it mean for me? So I understand that the tool which experiences the taste in the delicious food is given to me in order to understand that the food is deliberately prepared by a conscious being who, this conscious being, is the real source of existence of my appreciative feeling. So my consciousness questions, what am I expected to do now? The consciousness, human consciousness, realizes that this connection is for a purpose, which is my sense of appreciating the food is given to me in order to understand that this sense must be returned back to its source, which means it is not me who is entertaining the taste, but the creator of my feeling, creator of my spirit is letting me know he is entertaining me. So as the example of the Jilani, of course, we have to read this kind of narrations in a figurative way. So the conclusion that the author derives from the Jilani's example says, when spirit rules over body and heart rules the, let me see, desires of the soul. It means desires of the soul represents what? Appropriating the quality of taste to myself. Soul represents egoistic interpretation. So appropriates the taste. I like this food. This is what egoistic interpretation of it. But when heart, the human consciousness, rules over the desires of the soul, it means, no, it is not you. You are created. You are created with this ability to acknowledge it in order to understand that this creation out there, the taste and your own, the feeling that you understand, you appreciate the taste are given to you, and consciousness says, I haven't prepared them. I am given. For what purpose? Questions. What purpose? Mind says, it is not you that you can do it. It is given to you, and the one who gave you is reminding you that your appreciation of the taste is a gift from your creator to remind you, to teach you that you have to acknowledge your creator is entertaining you with this taste. Then, as a human being, perfect human being, not like an animal, we can benefit and use the delicious food, because if we are able to realize this transformation of understanding, taking the quality of enjoyment of the taste and returning back to its source of existence, it means I am being entertained by my creator. It means I am loved by my creator. I am being taken care of by my creator. That is the ultimate purpose of the structure or construction of this universe. Me and the things are out there, my physical needs, my mind, my feelings, and my spirit consciousness, they all function now in the way that they are created for. Otherwise, I would be reducing myself only to feed my physical needs and get satisfied in terms of my physical being. And this way means, or would mean, I am reducing my existence to only a physical being, animate physical being. That is very dishonoring to human beings. If someone even doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in the religion, doesn't believe that we have certain responsibilities, functions in this world, missions in this world, our purpose is to acknowledge and return back to our source of existence, to the creator. This man says, I am now only accidentally grown and developed being. If you tell this man, you are an animal, this man either will hit you or take you to court. Take you to the court. Why? Because he will say, you insulted me. But without realizing that his word view, his own explanation, his explanation of his own existence includes in it deliberately, clearly, it means I am an accidentally happen to be animal. But when you say you are an animal, he regards it, takes it as an insult, although his worldview already insulting himself. He doesn't realize it. That surprises me. That is the fallacy, shortcoming, or mistake of the materialist interpretation of the world. That is this contradiction we can see in their life. But this explanation makes me feel really satisfied with my existence, and at the same time makes me feel confident that this approach, this understanding is really fits my reality. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Did anybody else have any thoughts, comments? Everybody's rather quiet today. Oh, I see a hand. Faria, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Faria. To add to, so basically, the sense of taste in the example of eating or, eating. So it's doing its function, the tongue, as it says, like a doorkeeper. And it's goes, the food goes through your tongue taste and then goes to the pipes and goes into your stomach. And, that's what the function of those bodily parts are. But we, as human beings, are not just body. We also have the spirit or the soul, or we have the feelings and the senses. And the way the author is showing that, hey, don't reduce yourself to just the body aspect of it. I mean, this was explained, but I'm just rewording it a little differently, just to have a different perspective, maybe way of getting it. And just like the tongue is doing its duty to provide the taste, give news, right? But what is getting the news also? So there's the news that goes to the stomach, and then there's a communication in the physical sense, but the human being is also the soul, the spirit, body sense, which also is getting the news. And this is where the awareness of the human being and the consciousness kicks in to understand and wonder at this. Like, for example, from the taste of the tongue, although the taste physically gets it, but the human being can realizes it and can recognize who there is. There must be someone who is fulfilling me. When the stomach is satisfied, there must be someone, the fulfillment giver, or the one who gives satisfaction to me. So the spirit also is getting the news, but in the sense that where it can relate it to the actual provider, the actual source of of the food in this example. So let's see. And he says, or the author says in the second paragraph also, like, since it looks to the heart, spirit, and mind, which is the human side, the sense of taste holds a position and superior to the stomach. So let's be real, like be a human being, because every animal also eats food. Every animal also drinks water. So what is there in the human beings, which is the awareness, the consciousness, or the human side, which understands the whole universe in a way that I don't see the plants or the animals when they are getting their food, nutrition, or their drinks would do. So the human being has that responsibility to uphold that duty of theirs, that the soul, that the spirit, which is reading, and the consciousness, which is aware of those things, to use them, employ them in terms of recognizing where that bounty or that food or that feeling or that sense is coming from. So just like the sense of taste, same thing, the sense of eyes also have a purpose. Either you can use it for just as one aspect, which is for the bodily needs, as Suhail was saying, or you can see the other face or the other aspect, which looks to the one that the sight is being given by the one who is all-seeing. Yeah, just wanted to add that a little bit.
Good point.
For you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, adding nothing new, but when the author says, whenever your son's spirit rules his body, so like that's the main point. I think you were saying it earlier, that the spirit needs to be in charge of all the interactions, and people can also come up with, I'm very disciplined with what I do. That's all good, but where everything is in control. I don't let as in I've curbed my ego, or like the whole discipline that people follow with their lifestyle or whatever. But the whole point here was good about the two aspects, two things. So the interaction, the second aspect that looks to the one that is setting up the whole stage for the human being. So connecting everything, like all the feelings, senses, sense of enjoyment, all the experiences to the one that's bringing things into existence. I think it's, that's the crucial part. Go ahead.
And the point on the story at the end, so that's symbolic or metaphorical kind of story to highlight, about the human being being not just a physical bodily being, but a spiritual being, which is actually what is the main point of being a human being. And the point about, the point about like eating delicious food, it's not really about whether you should really not get the best food, or just I'm frugal, so I don't eat the best tasting food. That's not the point at all. The point is, how are you using your human side to get to know and appreciate and be grateful to your source of existence? So don't let your, if you're having the best food, the roasted chicken, and you're satisfying, but that's not really the point. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, as the story also highlights that. But as long as you are recognizing that, hey, your spirit is in charge rather than your physical body and your feelings, and the desires of the soul, and the awareness and consciousness is relating the whole event to their source. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The story, it's interesting because in the story, the son is emaciated as the result of asceticism. And I think the contrast being made between Sheikh Jilani eating and the son being emaciated, practicing asceticism, is that not eating, it's not, the Quran doesn't say don't eat. The Quran says, oh, yeah, you can eat and drink because that's who you are. I mean, that's how you're made, is to eat and drink. But don't be wasteful, or don't be extravagant in forgetting what the purpose of those things are. So by not eating, let's say, then you're sort of denying yourself divine bounty, and that reflects in being emaciated, so to speak. In a way, it's almost, and maybe this is just my interpretation, but it's almost sort of, in and of itself, it is sort of, I guess, an egoistic view, because you kind of say that I'm not in need, whether you're aware of it or not, I'm not in need of this bounty. I can live without it. So, but Sheikh Jilani says, well, I'm going to eat because that's who I am. But I don't let the food in and of itself dictate the end. It's really just a means, as Ali Murmur was saying, of being entertained and entertaining your spirit. So your conscious awareness, your humanity, your heart. So what sort of feelings it evokes within you, your reason, in other words, what thoughts, and that's sort of the pleasure you get from it. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, H. Beza.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't necessarily have anything new to add, but I was thinking about it's interesting how the way in which I utilize the sense of taste in this particular example, being tied to its duty of giving thanks, of being grateful, is directly tied to whether or not I degrade myself and find myself in a begging position. Like so if in the state that I am not frugal and I am wasteful and extravagant, then that action directly is a reflection of my own degradation of myself, of my own worth within my own eyes. So in a way, in carrying out this duty of things and recognizing that I'm being entertained, that I'm being taken care of. I mean, it sounds obvious in a way, but it's in recognizing this, I am in a way serving my own interests, if you will, as in I am not subjugating myself to begging or degradation or degradation or basically non-existence in a way, if that makes sense.
No, to me it did, and because you sort of take as the object of bounty as the food itself. So, and it doesn't serve your humanity then, in that regard. So, sort of wasting who you are as a human being. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, I think we can maybe move on to the next point. Okay, let's do that. So the fourth point. According to the hadith, the meaning of which is, the thrifty will suffer no family difficulties as regards to livelihood. The thrifty will suffer no family difficulties as regards to, I guess this must be to their livelihood. The frugal and economical person will not suffer undue trouble and hardship in supporting his family. There are countless proofs that frugality yields plenty and good living. For instance, I have seen myself, and I can say, according to the testimony of those who have befriended and assisted me, that by being frugal, I have sometimes seen a tenfold increase, and so have my friends. Even 9 years ago, and now it is 30, a number of tribal leaders who were exiled to Bordeaux together with me did their best to make me accept their zakat so that I would not suffer privation and humiliation due to lack of money. I said to those rich leaders, I have very little money, but I am frugal and I'm accustomed to being content with little. I am richer than you. I have very little money, but I am frugal and economical, and I'm accustomed to being content with little. I am richer than you. I refuse the repeated and insistent offers. It is worth noting that 2 years later, some of those who had offered me their zakat were in debt because they had not been frugal. Praise be to God, 7 years on from that, thanks to the plenty resulting from frugality, that small amount of money was still sufficient for me. It did not degrade me, nor compel me to present my needs to the people, nor make me deviate from my way of self-sufficiency and being independent of people, which is one of the principles of my life. The person who is not frugal is certain to be abased and reduced to poverty and in effect to begging. The person who is not frugal is certain to be abased and reduced to poverty and in effect to begging. At the present time, money, the means of wastefulness and extravagance, is extremely expensive. Money, the means of wastefulness and extravagance, is extremely expensive. Sometimes a person sells his honor and self-respect, and bribes are taken to obtain it. A person sells his honor and self-respect, and bribes are taken to obtain it. Sometimes the sacred things of religion are sold, and some inauspicious money received in return. That is to say, material goods worth 10 kurush are procured in return for an immaterial loss of 100 lira. However, according to the implied meaning of the verse, indeed it is God who gives all sustenance. Indeed it is God who gives all sustenance, Lord of all power and strength. Chapter 51, verse 58. And the explicit meaning of the verse, and there is no moving creature on the earth, but its sustenance is provided by God. And there's no moving creature on earth, but its sustenance is provided by God. Chapter 11, verse 6. If a person is frugal and restricts his needs to the essential, he will find enough sustenance to live on in unexpected ways. The verse guarantees it. The verse guarantees it. Yes, there are two sorts of sustenance. One is true sustenance, which is enough to subsist on. As the verse decrees, that this is guaranteed by the sustainer. So long as man's inclination towards evil does not interfere, he will find this essential sustenance under any circumstances. He will be compelled to sacrifice neither his religion, nor his honor, nor his self-respect. The second sort is metaphorical sustenance, due to which and its abuse, inessential needs become like essential ones. Inessential needs become like essential ones. And owing to the calamity of custom and tradition, people become addicted to them and cannot give them up. Such sustenance is not guaranteed by the sustainer, so the obtaining of it is extremely expensive, especially at the present time. These unfruitful, inauspicious goods are obtained by first of all sacrificing one's self-respect and accepting your degradation, and sometimes stooping to what is in effect begging, kissing the feet of the vile, and sometimes sacrificing the sacred things of religion, which are the light of eternal life. Also at this time of poverty and hardship, the distress people with consciences feel at the anguish of the hungry and needy sours any pleasure to be had from unlawfully acquired money. The distressed people with consciences feel at the anguish of the hungry and needy sours any pleasure to be had from unlawfully acquired money. As far as doubtful goods are concerned, one has to make do with them to the minimum degree necessary during strange times such as these. For according to the rule, necessity is determined according to its extent. Necessity is determined according to its extent. If compelled, illicit goods may be taken to the minimum degree necessary, not more. Someone in dire need may eat prohibited meat, but he may not eat his fill. He may eat enough only to remain alive. Also, one could not fully enjoy more than this in the presence of 100 people who are hungry. The following is a story showing that frugality is the cause of dignity and distinction. One time, Khatim Tai, who was world famous for his generosity, was giving a large banquet. Having given his guests a superfluity of presents, he went out to walk in the desert. There, he saw a poor old man carrying a load of thorny bushes and plants on his back. The thorns were piercing his skin and making him bleed. Khatim said to him, Khatim Tai is giving a large banquet and giving away gifts. Go there and you will be given 500 korosh in return for your load worth 5 korosh. The frugal old man replied, I raise and carry this thorny load with my self-respect. I am not going to become obliged to Khatim Tai. Later, they asked Khatim Tai, have you come across anyone more generous and estimable than yourself? He replied, the frugal old man in the desert was more estimable, elevated, and generous than me. That is the end of the fourth point. So I'll just give my brief comments here, but the fourth point now talks about frugality or not being wasteful or excessive as it pertains to one's social life or how he goes about in life. Like what is the utility or what benefit does man get from it? And he gives his own personal examples, but essentially saying that by being frugal, or by not being based by what you've been given, even if it's a small amount, the amount is in and of itself is sort of meaningless. It's what you do with the amount that is meaningful. In other words, are you excessive? So if you're excessive, something large can be can be seen as being not enough. So much so that you can go into debt, as he points out. And something small, like a small amount of money, can be a great amount because for you, uh, you recognize its worth. Whereas the one who has a lot but doesn't, it becomes a sort of eventually it can become debt or a burden on oneself. Hence why, as he says, he can live on a small amount for years while others have a great amount but will go into debt. It's because how do you see what you've been given? Is it something to just sort of um, waste or play around with, or is it something that you find to be precious because that's what you've been given, and you will make sort of responsible use of it? Um, and that is, and by making responsible use, you're sort of recognizing that you have been given it. It's a gift. That's why you're being responsible as to how you're using it. By not being responsible and being sort of reckless, I mean, you're in a way sort of being negligent that you are being provided in that regard. Um, and um, the greatest sort of waste, so to speak, is when it comes to the point that you sell even what makes you human, your humanity, your sort of um, maybe let's say what you believe in, your morals and your ethics, that are so great that they look to beyond the universe to an eternal existence, to eternal life, and yet you'll sell them for pennies. So what kind of transaction is that? That's being wasteful with your human qualities, because you don't, in a way, you think that they don't have any value, or that I can do as I please with them. I'm just going to be wasteful or extravagant with them. Because again, being negligent or not being completely aware that those are some bounties being provided or what you've been given. And he quotes the verses, "Indeed, it is God who gives all sustenance, Lord of all power and strength, and there is no moving creature on the earth, but his sustenance is provided by God." The key thing, or the operative phrase here, is God, or God is the one being providing, one who gives sustenance. So selling your humanity for something that is going to is transient anyway, is going to be gone, sort of denies the fact that it's those things. I mean, it's he who provides you, and therefore one should make use of what he's providing in the most appropriate way, sort of as he desires it to be, or what he wills of man to be. And then I guess the rest of the fourth point goes on that, in this regard, whatever one's given is enough to subsist on. That's a divine promise or guarantee, because the fact that man exists and lives is in and of itself, the guarantee or decree that whatever he's given is enough to subsist on, and that he doesn't need to sort of waste what he believes in, what his sort of virtues are, his morals and his ethics, and who he is as a human being. Does not need to make an illicit transaction. But one doesn't have to necessarily do that and can pursue metaphorical sustenance, or metaphorical in the sense that man doesn't really need the things that he thinks he needs, let's say, and perceives them to be essential. But because he perceives them to be essential, then it can require that you sacrifice who you are as a human being, self-respect, being degraded, kissing the feet of the vile, sometimes sacrificing what you believe in. And that's when he sort of gives the example of the old man, because the man is not willing to sacrifice his dignity as a human being, and knowing that he can carry the load. There's nothing to say he can't carry it. But his dignity is worth so much more than any amount of money or self-respect. And that's him being frugal in a way, or not wasteful of his dignity, because he knows that it's worth far more than anything any person can give him. So to me, this is what I took away from this, in that frugality has a benefit that looks to man's livelihood or social aspect, because it, again, sort of recognizes divine bounty and is not reckless and excessive with it. And therefore, in that way, man's sustenance is guaranteed, his livelihood is guaranteed. And that is what is true sustenance, because it's what's being provided. That's what makes it true. Or in other words, man
Switch back.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where.
About
Hello?
you and like that.
Sorry, you were breaking up, but so I'd just given my, I'm not sure where I got cut off, but I had sort of given my thoughts on this point. So I don't know if anybody has any of their own thoughts. Lima, go ahead.
To break the silence. The third paragraph, the beginning of the third paragraph, which starts, the person who is not frugal is certain to be abased and reduced to poverty, and in effect, to begging. What does it mean really? Why? Well, if a person is really rich and even he is not frugal, he wouldn't be reduced in this physical world to begging. I think the text is referring to something else here. Can you help me to understand?
You know, what I think is that begging from things, in other words, trying to sort of derive pleasure or from things. So um, you think that the things themselves are what is pleasurable, and which leads to wastefulness and extravagance. So the more I experience something, and I think that's what gives me pleasure, the more I want it. So I will keep trying to experience it. Let's say spend more and more money to do so. So I'm begging from something that can't give me pleasure, whereas frugality acknowledges that pleasure is coming from a divine source. That's experiencing divine pleasure. So you don't need to spend, let's say in this case, time and money to experience it. It's rather cheap. In actuality, it's essentially free. So you're not begging because it's given, like free of cost. That's the way I understand it. I don't know if you wanted to. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So you actually entered into the following sentence in your explanation. This following sentence is, at the present time, money, the means of wastefulness and extravagance, if the money is used in a wasteful way, this money is extremely expensive. Isn't that an interesting expression that this author uses? Money is expensive? So I would like to hear some more comment on it. Money, how money can be expensive, although you touched upon it, but I think it is important to notice for us to talk about it a bit more.
I'll leave it open. Anybody else who wants to make any comment? Hamim says, at the loss of my humanity, money can be expensive. I don't know if you want to open up your mic and share your thoughts.
Um, it all depends on my worldview. If I have this just the universe for the sake of its existence, this is it. I have to do everything that I can to attain a pleasurable life, in terms of just like where my animals,
You're sorry, you're breaking up.
factor. Aye.
So if you can write it out,
Okay,
I can read it.
stuff.
If you want to write out the comment.
Okay, that's good. I will write out. Okay, no problem.
Does it, while she's doing that, anybody else have any thoughts? H. Beza, go ahead.
Yeah, I think perhaps our friend was referring to this as she was getting cut off, but I was thinking about how, you know, in trying to buy that like infinite with money is quite expensive and not really possible, because when I look at myself and my human needs, I'm in need of perfection, and I'm in need of all of these qualities infinitely. So I'm in need of a sustainer that is self-subsistent, that is independent, that can meet these needs. So when it says money is extremely expensive, if I try to make the money a way just to buy, or I don't know, attain things in order to feel happy or full, eating for the sake of eating, or buying something to entertain myself for the sake of feeling happy in that moment. It's quite expensive because the void in me can never really be fulfilled by the object or the thing itself, if I utilize it in that way. And I guess like one of the key points with this fourth point in relation to the third point was that, it's not that I shouldn't eat or I shouldn't utilize the things that are created around me, but in doing so, being mindful and conscious of its true purpose in its existence. So if I'm using my money to buy things, being aware and conscious of the purpose of that which I am buying, and using it to utilizing it to utilizing my qualities, starting with the sense of the need, to connect it to my creator, to do it consciously, as opposed to just doing it for the sake of doing it without consciousness or awareness.
Yeah, it's, the price of things, if it means sort of selling your humanity, then that makes it quite expensive. In other words, to me, it's like it's letting, going back to the previous point, it's letting things rule over the spirit, the heart, and the mind. That's, in other words, now those things have, let's say, money, now becomes the one that has value, or what you perceive to have the most value. So they rule over who man is, and so they will, man will willfully transact who he is, his humanity, which looks to eternity and eternal satisfaction, for $1. That means making money obtainable is quite expensive. So, because it's expensive in relation to you, who you are as a human being, and what you have to give up. Frugality reverses that situation and sees money as just like the tongue and the stomach, as just a means. They're a doorkeeper. That's it. Nothing more than that. And that's where it acquires its place. That's why in the opposite view, in that position, money is essentially cheap in a sense, because as he points out earlier, he can extend maybe $1 further than somebody who's wasteful and extravagant. So the value there is in its proper place. I'll read some comments here. Halim says, it all depends on one's worldview. If I see the existence of the universe as for the sake of this universe only, then I lose myself in materiality rather than looking for eternal satisfaction. Yeah, I agree with that. We all have goals. That is the motivator to achieve things. However, if my goal is just bound to this world where I'm utilizing all my human abilities for the sake of it, then this becomes expensive for me in a way where I sub my humanity not for its true purpose, which is to connect to one that provides eternal satisfaction in my existence. Yeah. I think that's what Nursi is pointing out here. So nothing more to add in that regard. I don't know if anybody has any comments, other comments, thoughts. I will say this, it's a very different way to live than what societal expectation is, because I always like when he pointed out metaphorical sustenance, because it's in a way imposing upon, it's like you trying to impose upon yourself some sort of artificial reality. It's appealing and addictive, as he says, and it's hard to give it up. But it's expensive. And to the point that, again, it's expensive because you have to sell your human worth for it, potentially. So, you know, I think oh, go ahead, Ali, remember.
I really like the expression Hamim said in the chat box, selling my humanity. What does it mean? I said, oh, it is a very good expression. Of course, my human senses are employed to make more physical objects so that I will satisfy myself with these physical objects. Of course, if the human senses are only utilized for obtaining the physical objects do not themselves respond to the expectation of the senses, but they go to the stomach or human proud, like my property, like the wealth, etc., being proud. Human senses, real human senses, not distorted human senses, can only get satisfaction if they find out the eternal creator or their eternal creator and acknowledge that their existence belongs to him. But if I utilize these human senses to obtaining the physical objects, I never will be satisfied. That is a very interesting and important concept, selling my humanity. Another way of understanding this selling one's humanity, really in conditions of this world, if I spend all my time, my existence, to make money only, it means I am selling myself to this world in order to satisfy my needs of my stomach or needs of my egoistic satisfactions. It means I must be esteemed by the people, I must be admired by the people. This kind of expectations are the objects of my whole life. So this selling one's humanity may have two meanings, and both of them are really, really very inhuman. It reduces me to being a physical entity or just a person who runs after false images, claiming that I am a great man, but dying at the end. It is a very important, I wanted to appreciate the beauty of this expression. Thank you.
Thank you. we are pretty much out of time. So unless anybody has any closing thoughts, concerns, questions, we can close the session, inshallah. Okay. Subhanaka illa I think, Hamim, are you not able to close it, or do you want me to close it?
سبحانك لا علم لنا
إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين بحرمة سر سورة الفاتحة.
Okay, thank you.
Inshallah, see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام. Thank you.
Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام. عليكم السلام.